Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Friday. It's the WordPress Friday Hangout. Victor and I are back. I'm muting the live stream. What's up, Victor?
Hello, everyone. Hello, WordPressers.
Hello, world. We're excited.
Hello, world.
We got a really important topic to dig into today. So, let's get on our guests because I want to make sure we have maximum time to discuss. So let's bring them on here. We'll do some proper introductions. There we go. All right. So let's do some introductions. We got a couple of really awesome guests today. We got a really important topic we're going to dig into. But let's let everybody know who we are. So Ebonie, why don't you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Hello, my name is Ebonie Butler. I am a lead software engineer at Penske Media Corporation. I've been in the WordPress community since 2016, so I guess I'm pretty new, not a long timer yet, at least. My experience with WordPress is I work on a lot of WordPress websites, constantly building plugins and themes. In terms of open source, contributing to open source, I was on a cohort member of the WordPress 5.6 release squad, and also the release coordinator for WordPress 5.7. So that is me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And of course we have Laura back again. So Laura was on last week, but she's back because of very relevant topic. Some clips we're going to show in a little bit, but Laura, why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, hi, my name's Laura Byrne. I am currently at Web Dev Studios as an account manager, and my experience in WordPress dates back to 2006 when a friend and I created a highly viral WordPress website, and my experience is primarily that of a content creator. And I think about WordPress from the user standpoint.
Awesome. I'm realizing now that this might be the most Philly show that we ever have. Laura's kind of messing us up here in New York, but or North Jersey. But I mean, you got Victor and Ebonie down in Philly. I'm in the burbs just north of Philly. So I love it. This might be the most Philly show ever. Victor, what do you think?
I can speak conversational Philly. I lived there for 3 years, so I can speak conversational Philly. There we go.
That's awesome.
I do tell people Philly is like, not to insult New York. I'm from New York. My family's been there since 1937.
Please insult New York all you want on this show.
No, Bay Ridge and Far Rockaway are not New York. Like, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, they're politically and geographically part of that. But when I had the option, landlord's trying to get $7,000 a month rent. I'm like, am I going to go to Far Rockaway where like nothing's going on and it feels like the suburbs just so I can say I live in New York and it's the same 3-hour commute into the city, or I can go to Philly, live like a king, not pay $7 amount of rent, and people aren't as crazy. It's like, I like Philly. I'm loving it. And it's like a lot of New Yorkers and people I know from all over, Philly's on the up. It's a cool spot to be.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's getting more expensive though. So I will say that.
Yeah, it will, but not as expensive as New York. That's like New York is just silly.
Expensive as New York. And has an amazing tech scene in the Philly area. So
yeah,
one of the reasons I love it here, just always tech events, people just getting together to geek out. It's a really fun city for tech, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's get into our show today and the main topic. So this is an important topic, one I'm excited to kind of dig into. And I think I want to kind of go back in the history a little bit, but I think to kind of tee it up. Laura, you were at the State of the Word, the past State of the Word with Matt Mullenweg there in New York. And during the Q&A session, you got up and asked a really good question of Matt Mullenweg, the co-founding developer of WordPress. And let me just play that because we're a very professional show here. So that's what we do. We play clips as soon as I can figure out how to do it. Here we are.
Hi, my name's Laura Byrne. I'm just from across the river in Montclair, New Jersey. Cool. We had WordCamp Montclair last year. I think we were one of 2 North American WordCamps last year. We're going to have it again. And one of my favorite things we had at that camp is we had folks from the all-women release squad do a panel. We had Josepha, we had Michelle, Ebonie Butler, and I am forgetting someone. Courtney, thank you so much. She's in the room. She's going to kill me. And I'm sitting next to her. This is very embarrassing. So anyway, trying to dig myself out of this hole. So I think that release squad was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Can we do it again?
Sure.
When?
Absolutely. When would you like to?
I don't know. I'm thinking
6.4 is when we'd like to, Matt. So Great question. And I think, obviously everyone's very supportive of the idea and loves the idea. But what many people probably don't realize is there was an all-female release squad of WordPress 5.6. And Ebony, you were on that. You were part of that squad. So I'd love to kind of go back to the 5.6 release, and maybe we could talk a little bit, because I don't actually know how that all came to be. Honestly, I found out about it after it had already been kind of announced of the leads and the core contributors. But I'd love to hear more of the history of how that actually came to be for that first release, because it is pretty historic to have an all-female release on a open source code project like WordPress.
I mean, I think it initially started with Josepha Hayden, and her title within the WordPress community has like shifted like 4 times. So I'm just not even going to try to figure out what Josepha's title is right now, but like, you can find her. She's the only Josepha Hayden on Twitter. Like, go for it. And she was the one who really has always led the charge for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the WordPress project. And she was the one who came up with the initial idea of a women in non-binary squad to bring more underrepresented groups into WordPress and to have people be comfortable by being around folks who are like them, and having that opportunity to say, I can do this, to ask a question, to not feel intimidated. Just a lot of incredibly good things there, with the ultimate goal of having more folks from underrepresented groups take part in the making of WordPress, because WordPress is for everyone. And let's make sure that everyone who uses WordPress is represented in WordPress releases.
Yeah, I love that. And Ebony, what was your official title with the release squad? You were tech lead, is that correct?
I supported the tech lead. So the cool thing about the WordPress 5.6 release, and kind of talks to how specific and intentional the woman in non-binary release squad was, is that we had our usual release lead, release coordinator, all those roles filled by women and non-binary people, but also they had support in a cohort, aka mentees that we can ask questions and get our questions answered, and just basically feel comfortable potentially filling that role in the future release. So I was on the core tech lead cohort. Helen was actually the core tech lead, so I got to ask her a lot of questions while she was doing all of that core tech lead duties. Because as I mentioned before, I'm a developer. I look at a lot of code, so the core tech lead was super appealing to me, and I wanted to be able to like approve code and all that fun stuff. So it was a great learning experience. But I also, I'm not sure if this kind of setup was done in any future releases where we have cohorts, but I personally think that should be a regular thing, where we should always be bringing up people who are interested in leading a future release squad and making them feel comfortable, and having that being a part of the role for a release lead, for a release coordinator. Hey, we have these mentees here that would like to eventually do what you do. Can you also take on the duty? How heavy, how light you want to take on that duty of training them up so they can eventually do that role. So I thought that was very unique about this WordPress 5.6 squad. And eventually, even though I did not lead, I was not a core tech lead in the future release yet, but I was a release coordinator in the next release right after that. So trained up pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of, it's like the buddy program almost, right? Like, because like contributing to WordPress core, or honestly just putting things out there publicly, especially code, is extremely intimidating, right? Because I mean, and I've been in the WordPress space for a long time. I've written books. I still get worried when I put code publicly, because there's this sense that people are just going to tear it apart and I don't know what I'm doing. And you know what I mean? Like, and I think it doesn't matter what level and how long you've been doing this. We all feel that in some way when we're putting ourselves out publicly. And when you're doing it from basically what you do as a job as well, like being a developer, and then you're putting stuff out there, it takes a lot. And I think many people don't realize that until they do it. Even if you're amazingly talented developer, like, it still is putting yourself out there publicly in a very open and even a potentially vulnerable position, because everybody has opinions online. Yeah, everybody has opinions
Tossed in the
online,
deep
and
end of
you're
the
leading
pool.
the software charge
Yeah.
on 50% of the internet. So yeah, I love the idea. It sounds like it could definitely help bring in that kind of next, the next group of contributors, and certainly getting more, female, non-binary, and just a more diverse group of contributors, which is only going to help the project.
Yeah.
Great.
Also, I think Courtney Robertson, who's in the chat, she also has shared with me a few other programs going on. So like the Make WP Train team and Learn team, they are trying to put together other, I think it's like a mentorship program, or like a educator in residence program, and there's different things like that to try to attract, new and different talent to WordPress.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is great. Like I said, otherwise you feel like you're being tossed into the deep end of the pool, or, I mean, honestly, kind of the deep end of the ocean. It's not even the deep end of the pool. You feel like you're being tossed in the deep end of the ocean, and just, having that support is fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. Ebony, it kind of reminds me, I sat in on your presentation. I think it was WordCamp US last year, right? With the streaming.
Yeah.
Because you do a lot of streaming and code streaming. So you're not just contributing to WordPress core, but you're on Twitch, like live coding, which to me is even more intimidating because it's like real-time feedback from anybody watching.
Yeah.
But I got to believe that also kind of helps you get more comfortable with putting yourself out there, putting code out there, being a little bit, in more of a open or high level position with a project like WordPress.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even think, was I streaming? I think I might have just started streaming, honestly, when I started contributing to WordPress open source. But exactly like you said, putting yourself out there and having your code on display, especially with me, I'm not like some amazing developer. I was just learning. And I use a Twitch platform. I haven't been coding recently that much, but I used a Twitch platform in the beginning to teach myself how to code certain languages. It wasn't like a show off, like, oh yeah, look what I can do. It was never that. And that's not really beneficial for me personally when I watch a stream. But I was actively learning in public because I didn't have opportunities to learn, do a lot of JavaScript and a lot of Gutenberg type things at the current job I was at. And so I knew that I needed to get my skills up, my React skills up, to be able to be effective and be a good developer when it came to the Gutenberg block editor and building blocks and understanding how block works and all that. So I decided to start streaming JavaScript and learning and Node.js and learning React, learning Next.js. And, surprisingly, a lot of people enjoyed that. And a lot of people were able to relate to the struggles I was, complaining about and raging about on the stream. And some people were motivated to learn code themselves. And some people were like, hey, I know what the problem is. Here's how you fix it. And then I learned from them. So it was kind of a give and take, a really cool experience. But it was definitely intimidating. It's not, I encourage people to try it for sure. Don't be worried about mean comments. People, that just happens at any time you put yourself out there, you possibly will get mean comments, and that's okay. That's just comes with putting yourself out there to begin with. But I will say I literally only got one or two, and I've been streaming for like 3 years. So don't be too intimidated if you're interested in doing it. I say just do it if you are.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting though, like as you're talking about comments, Ebonie, I mean, I'm just thinking as they've announced the first time they announced the all-female non-binary release squad, and now the second time there's going to be a second one that has come up. And there have been comments, like the second it went out, there were a bunch of comments that were, this is discriminatory, this is exclusionary, why do we need this? I think a lot of women and people who are non-binary can sit there and eye roll it and just go, oh, please. And I'm sure a lot of other folks, Brad, Victor, like you, look at it, eye roll it and go, oh God, really? And I think what's important sometimes is just addressing those comments when you see them, because silence means assent, right? It means that you can be seen to agree with it. And I think it's important that when people see folks taking that kind of stance, that somebody comes out and talks to them. I'm not saying yell at them. I'm saying talk to them, engage them in conversation. And somebody like Ebonie or I having that conversation with them sometimes is only going to get so far. but somebody like Brad or Victor speaking to their peers as to why it's important really goes an incredibly further distance as to why it's important to have it. I think it's important to remember that it's a global project. It's not a US project. It's not a Canada project. It is a global project, and opportunities for women and non-binary folks across the globe is a radically different experience depending upon where you are. So this is why a all-woman and non-binary release squad is important.
And also I'll say it starts at the top too, like even beyond the whole thing of, sexism, racism, etc. It's just about being a nice person. And I remember WordCamp Atlanta, I think it was 2018. And he used to work with you guys, Brett, one of his people from his agency he was with, that agency, the person who spoke had a stutter. And it was like one of their top React developers. And I don't know if everyone knows this. I used to have a stutter, like a debilitating stutter. So I was like 12. I was bullied. I had a baby talk. I would say, well, Victor, like that's how I spoke. Like, and people are like, you? I'm like, yeah, dude, not everyone's born, like a speaker. And I remember someone said to me in the talk, like, man, that guy was terrible. He stuttered the whole time. What an idiot. And I got really offended. I took the guy aside, and instead of getting mad and saying, no, you're an idiot, I said, hey, look, man, come here for a second. Everyone that speaks here is a volunteer. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, everyone that speaks here is a volunteer. Everyone here, like that guy's not a speaker, that like you might go to these things and someone's going to drop insane knowledge, but they're not going to speak in a way that you understand. I mean, you should understand they have, good slides, but they're not going to speak in a way that you might be used to. They might have different accents. They might be different people, but you need to, it's a very brave thing for them to get up there. Isn't public speaking, wouldn't people rather do their taxes and die than public speaking? Isn't that like the survey?
Yes.
And so what I'm saying is like, we need to protect the people that are sharing. And so I feel like anyone that's sharing in a positive way, protect them. And I agree with Laura, like it really comes from the top. Unfortunately, it's someone like Brad or I who are very like seen as like a little more experienced in the world. Like in the end, like I have engineers who like can run circles around me because we don't code. I mean, Brad can back me up here. You don't code that much once you're up the top. Like you're more meetings than anything. And so I think it's unfortunate, but it comes from the top. We are the ones who also have to, don't just let someone say something. We have to say something and be like, hey, that's not right.
Yeah.
And it's most appreciated. I mean, I will say this too, is that allyship is noticed, like folks who are women, who are gender non-binary, we have each other's backs, but we 100% notice when somebody else in the community who is in an area of privilege speaks up and supports us and is a really good ally. Like it 100% is noticed. And I think that comes back to you in goodwill of people who want you to speak, want you to be involved with you with a company, want to work at that company, or conversely, if it's not as good of an experience, there's a real sense of, yeah, this is why I'm never speaking at this event, or this is why I am never going to get involved in anything that so-and-so runs. And it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. And I mean, in the tech industry, obviously it's a very white male dominated industry. A lot of people that look like me, right? So, and as the web has grown, as WordPress has grown, we've all grown in our careers and our jobs. It's become way, more apparent why diversity is so important in what we do, and I'm just as guilty. When we started web dev, we just hired based on whoever we hired. Right. And then at one point, Lisa and I kind of stepped back and said, we got a lot of dudes at this company. Like we need to actually put more of a focus on diversifying, not because we were making decisions based on, gender or race or anything, but inadvertently, that's just, I mean, we had a whole company of guys and only a couple of women. And so a few years back, Lisa and I sat down and said, we need to actually, find, people out there, women and minorities to join our team because we want to be diverse. And now I'm really proud of just the landscape of our company. Where the majority of our managers are women. We have amazing lead developers that are women. And it's only made us better, because it's just a matter of how, people think of things. And the more diverse you can be, honestly, the more ideas and thoughts you can bring to the table that I may not think about because whatever that idea is hasn't impacted me, So So I think all of us have to kind of open our eyes a little bit and be a little bit more proactive. And I think, in my opinion, things like this and seeing it on a global scale, something like WordPress that's powering like half the internet, is huge to help with that. For maybe there's other companies and other projects that aren't necessarily doing it on purpose, but it's happening naturally, that it's all mostly guys helping or whatever. Like, you have to put in a little bit more effort, be more opening, do things like the mentorship you mentioned, Ebonie, because I love that idea. It just makes it, I think, less stressful if you can be with a buddy essentially to help guide you along the way. So
Yeah.
So I guess all that said, I would love to know, like, in any impacts, anyone that you've seen from that 5.6 release. Like, does it feel like it's opened the doors for more, females, non-binary, to get involved, to show up? Are we starting to see a more diverse kind of contributor group after that 5.6 release? I'm curious what that impact has had. And I'll just throw it out to the group if anyone has thoughts on it.
I mean, I would say it's more obvious that there were more women. Like, there were always women out there, but they were in a silo. Like, it just has become so much more easy to reach out to other women and meet other women. I mean, I've seen there are more women taking part in the release squad since then. Like, it's the networking, Brad, right? Like, I think it comes to the point that you're talking about. Like, I don't think there are a bunch of guys going, whoa, how do we keep the women out? Like, that's not happening, right? It's really not, because it would be so easy to call that out, right? But it's like you said, like, when you need somebody, oh, I have my friend and this is who I know, and this is a person like me. It takes that self-awareness to reach out beyond that. And I think when the women then suddenly came in, there are people like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. Sometimes it's like people don't even realize what you do, and it's that exposure and getting out there and people seeing you. And then the next time you need somebody, you go to this person and then they say, who else can you bring in? I mean, I'll use a real life experience from myself. Mike Oteri knew that I was kind of doing some things tangential to the release squad. I had just moved to New Jersey. He's like, Laura, I need more people at WordPress Montclair meetup. Would you join us? And I was like, sure. And it was all guys. I mean, it was mostly guys when I joined. I was the first female co-organizer. And then the first thing Mike said to me is, who else can you invite? Who else do you know? Instantaneously, the top of my head, I was like, Rachel Wynn Winchester is the right person to bring in there. Another person not like me. And it's really helped to, augment what's going on. It diversifies. So, and all of this trickles down from that kind of release squad. That's just me. There's probably 100 stories like that none of us ever are aware of, but that little drop in the ocean makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
Courtney Robertson in the chat just mentioned that there's definitely opened up awareness of contributors from other teams involved in the release. How are these other teams vital to the release? It's nice, and Rachel follows up. That's her. So it's apparently it is helping, which is awesome to hear.
I mean, I will say too that at WordCamp Asia, Harry Schenker, who's one of the key people in the WordPress project, one of the things he's tasked with doing is 5 for the Future. And he had this slide like recapping like things that went on in releases and things that can do to really massively affect the project. And they were talking about how some of the top things you can do to impact the project are not only code, but documentation, speaking, leading a meetup, what have you. And he had a slide up of incredibly impactful contributors. And I remember calling it out during Harry's talk, saying one of the things that has not escaped me on this slide is that 3 of the most powerful people they identified as having an impact were Femi, Birgit Polyhawk, and Milana Kopp, who all basically had to do with documentation. If we have WordPress and we have no documentation, we're not getting anywhere. And it instantaneously called out to me a couple of things. We had 3 women having a powerful impact, 3 women across multiple generations, racial breakups, what have you, having a powerful impact, and 3 people who weren't involved in code having a powerful impact. And to me, that was huge. And I don't think that slide would have existed 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been a slide of just guys who are in code. And I think that shows you the path that we've come on.
So if along those lines, obviously there's very technical ways to contribute to WordPress, which I think is what a lot of people assume when you say contributing to WordPress, it's all about code and helping build the WordPress software. But then there's even more non-technical, components like documentation, the thankless job of documentation that we all want, but nobody ever wants to really do, right? Like we need it, but we don't. It's always kind of the last thing we work on, it seems. So I'm curious, maybe we give some tips or thoughts on if people are out there, if anyone's listening and wants to get involved, there's, and we'll get into kind of the release that's coming up in the proposal, but if people want to get involved, what is the recommendation if they've never contributed to WordPress or any project and they're just kind of want to dip their toe in, where should they go?
WordPress Slack, a nice place to start out. Yes, it's overwhelming when you first get in there. That's definitely a warning. There's a lot of channels, a lot of talk going on, but I think it's important to just see, because that is the main source of communication when it comes to the project, along with the core track, our GitHub, but that's more on the code side. That is the main centralized communication spot. So getting used to seeing how people talk and seeing whose name you might recognize, whose names you don't. Even doing light introductions, like if you go into the meta channel and you're like, oh wow, this is definitely up my alley, something I like data, I like working with data, and trying to get that cleaned up and see who is the main, I guess, the head of that, are running that meta group, and introduce yourself. Just, don't be afraid to say hi. It's a big thing, because I know when I first joined, I didn't know a lot of people, and I felt like it wasn't super easy to just be like, hey, I'm interested in this. Can you tell me more about this? But the cool thing about being a part of this community is everyone is really nice. They don't be intimidated, because they all just want to help, and they want to share their knowledge and expand. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I mean, super solid recommendations that Ebonie's giving out. I think the other thing too that you can do is, within that Slack instance, there's a way to like DM folks, and you're like, you can easily ask a question like, hey, how do I get more involved here, right? Or like, even like so much of the WordPress community is on Twitter, like DM somebody on Twitter who's been involved in this, who's tweeting about it, or direct, or just message them and ask them if you can get into a conversation with them and learn more about it. Like, that's a great way to do it. Just start a conversation. And I think the other thing too is that, you don't have to commit like 40 hours of your life doing this, right? Like, you can, it's, as Victor pointed out before, it's a volunteer gig. You can contribute as much as you can. Like, everybody has different capacities with time. Like, nobody's telling you have to do X number of hours a week. You can do what you do and be beneficial. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but like, it is true in this case that every little bit helps. It is 100% true.
Yeah, great advice. And I remember a story from Andrew Nason years ago. And if you don't know Andrew, he still is involved a little bit, but he was like the developer on WordPress for a number of years. And I remember him telling the story where when he first got involved, and I felt like he knew every single line of code in WordPress, right? Like, he was just a brilliant person, he said when he first got involved in WordPress, he was in the Slack and he just watched for almost a year Slack, and he would be in Track, which is, where they're tracking the actual, conversations and patches and core code that's going into WordPress. So he just watched and he tried to get a sense of how things worked and how the conversations worked and where he may or may not want to get involved. And then he, dipped his toe in, as I like to say, and the next thing you know, he's kind of running the whole thing. So even someone at his level still kind of stood back and said, let me just see how this is working. Let me just see where I might fit or not fit, and try to get a sense of how all this WordPress core development and releases work. And to hear that story from someone like Andrew, who was just, really at the top of his game from a development standpoint, was kind of eye-opening, because I just assumed he dove right in and like took off, right? But that wasn't the case. So I love that idea. Like, it's join Slack, but it doesn't mean you need to like, hey, everybody, and hear the whole room and start this conversation. Just join and just start watching. Everything's done in public. I should say most things are done in public.
I'm going to say something though. I'm going to be the one that says we do a terrible job at getting people to contribute. If you go to the Make WordPress page, go to it right now. It says Make WordPress and it says core. What's core? Design. Oh, I'm not a designer. Mobile. Oh, you guys have a mobile app? Accessibility. Oh, so how do I do that? These aren't actionable words. And so the problem with the WordPress and Make, and I've said this and I'll keep saying it until everyone, either I die or people get sick of me. I think we do a terrible job with our copy communication. It says on the page, meetings, team updates. Oh, this sounds like bureaucracy. What fun. Why do we not have something that says, make a quick design, contribute a pattern? Like, why are we not doing this? Right. And so, and I feel a lot of like, there's so what Brad is describing, unfortunately, can't happen today. Can, but more rarely. We're dealing with the TikTok generation, right? Everything's snappy, everything's quick. And I used to tell people all the time, yes, and Courtney, I will overhaul the page if I don't have to sit in 10 meetings and have 30 commenters from people who don't understand SEO and UX. And I understand that we can have everyone contribute, but sometimes, look, I'm at the top of my game. Like I work with Sotheby's, Blue Apron, like all these big companies. And so I can have an opinion on this, right? And so when I have to go into a room, and again, no shade or offense to people who are contributing, I think we as an organization just say, look, and I think marketing sometimes does not get the same thought of engineering. So as an engineer, I would never have a low-level engineer come in and say to the high-level engineer, hey, you know what? I know accessibility-wise, this should all have alt tags, but that's not cool anymore. Let's get rid of the alt tags. The senior engineer would say, hold on a second, dude. Like, I know that's how the cool kids are doing it, but we need alt tags, right? And I think with marketing design, we don't treat it like this kind of like a cohort type thing where we should have someone who comes in who has, zone expertise, and then we just throw everyone at marketing. And again, like we're kind of like kidding ourselves that we don't do that kind of level of thought when we go and put this stuff here, right? And I think on Alan Nimitz saying, we had a conversation about this on Twitter also. And I'll say something, Ebonie, I'm embarrassed that I don't know you because you're in Philly. I know Rachel, we're kicking back up, the WordPress meetup, but why are you not, why are these women who are like, and you all guys also have good style, like Laura, your style, when you ask that question, you guys are all sharp looking people. Why do we not have you on the homepage saying like, because by the way, I haven't seen another open source project be like, hey, our release was led by an all-female non-binary squad. Why is there not a PR team behind that? Why is WordPress not partnering with Women Who Code and the Black Girls Code and all these programs and saying, hey, like, girls, like, you want to be girl power? This is where it's at right here, WordPress. And we're not doing that. And like, I see Awesome Motive and again, no shade, like these companies like Pantheon, they have DevRel, but they're not going out to these women focused code things and saying WordPress is here. JavaScript is, Node is, Next.js is. Why isn't WordPress? And that bums me out, man, because I want more people who don't look like me. Like I'm Rachel, she's on here. I told her, I'm like, I'm so sick of running into people that look like me, man. I'm like, I can't deal with it anymore. I deal with them at work all day. So that's how I feel WordPress could be better. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we'd all agree WordPress has a marketing problem because those are great points, Victor. You're right. You go to the homepage and thankfully the homepage has been refreshed a little bit on WordPress.org. So it looks a little bit more modern.
But not Make, right? Not Make.
No, Make you hit it and you get this this notice that takes up the whole page. And then it's like, oh, wait, that's not actually the content.
It's cognitive overload. It's cognitive overload.
It also looks like we went back to like the year 2000. It's I want my DeLorean to get me to where we are now,
I mean, I love those ideas, Victor. You're right. Like this should be promoted more, because honestly, even researching the show a bit, I had to dig around a little bit more. Like the 5.6 release, it's mentioned on the site. There's a blog post about it, but I think WP Tavern had a post. But beyond that, I didn't find a whole lot. And then there's the panel last year at Montclair. And you're right, for this to happen on software that's powering almost half the internet, that is a big freaking deal.
We should be telling this story to everyone. Like, and that's, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, and here's the other thing. And I think I laid the groundwork a little bit for this on Twitter. And I think this is in Joseph Hayden's head too, is that we shouldn't be a fun one-off feature. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody wants to just be like, hey, we had the women non-binary release squad, tick that box and moving on, right? Like, if you're going to commit to DEI, then you're going to commit to DEI. It is not going to hurt folks to once a year, once every other year, whatever the scenario is, to have a regular gig going on that is to have folks who are women and gender non-binary, underrepresented groups be a consistent part of bringing them into a release squad. And this is how you get the message out. This is how you increase participation. Diversity isn't a fun feature. It's an accepted practice. And this is one way of going about it, is committing to it and having it be a permanent gig, because that is what lets people know, hey, they're serious. We just weren't a one-off fun feature. We are serious. We are here. We belong. We are welcome.
And that's where the new, well, I guess WordPress 6.4, is it official? Has that been decided that WordPress 6.4 will be all female, non-binary, or are they working towards that goal and to see if they can form that team?
They're working towards it. And I think what they're doing, and Ebonie touched on this before, usually what they do too is like have you kind of come in on the release before as a learning opportunity, and then you really take ownership of the release after that. So I think they're still very much setting the wheels in motion on that, figuring this all out. But it's going to happen. I mean, it may bobble a little bit as to which specific squad it is, but it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, perfect time. If you haven't gotten involved, if there's any interest, this seems like a good time, because WordPress 6.2 is beta. I think beta 2 or beta 3 is out. I think it's got to be released around the end of the month, and then right into start planning for 6.3, which would be that pre-release you mentioned of kind of getting your feet wet, maybe getting a mentor of sorts and getting ready for, being more involved in that 6.4 release, which it sounds like will be the second, or the next all female non-binary. But I love the point, Laura. It's not just a one-off novelty, like keep it rolling. I think the idea of putting, another release out there proves that it was not the goal, and that it will not be the goal, because they'll keep doing it, which is awesome.
I think it's also about blind spots too, because when someone had said before, I think it was Laura, that people are like, oh, well, why does this matter? This is silly. This is, reverse sexism or something, right? The silly thing to me is like, I just say to people, blind spots. The reason a lot of these algorithms and like the, ChatGPT, I'm not impressed by it sometimes. Ask it questions about Latino culture. Ask it questions about like different things. It doesn't know, or it lies. And the things I'll say to people is like, algorithms are biased, and that's like a big thing. And I guess one interesting thing at NYU, one of my students actually did a podcast. It's called Undercurrents. It's on Audible, and it's about algorithms, biases in like, now they're using it in courtrooms, et cetera. But also here's a couple other blind spots. Like, we're building software, right? Who better than NASA to learn from? Well, guess what? NASA, for the first female flight into space, they sent her with 100 tampons for a 3-day mission. Is that a blind spot? Like that the engineers. So I let people know that. And I'm saying, now people might argue, okay, so what? So what? You're going into outer space. How much do tampons weigh? How much space does it take? How much did that ruin the flight? Because they didn't go to a female engineer and say, how many tampons should we have on this flight? And by the way, because the engineer's like, I don't want to ask her. And it's like, okay, well, dude, if you're scared of talking about, female things, then maybe you need females on the team, right? And so there's blind spots created, and that, like, a lot of the times people, like, and then the other thing too, look at I don't know if everyone remembers this, Kylie Jenner, the Pepsi thing, where she was like it was during the BLM protest, and she gives someone a Pepsi, and it got mocked, and it was because no one in the room felt empowered to go, yeah, no one did it. And then they launched it, millions of dollars, failed campaign. So we are benefiting as an organization to blind spots here, right? And I think we're focused on that.
Yeah, I mean, and like stuff is out there, like, and there's every woman in WordPress can tell a story or multiple stories. I mean, I'll just give you a quick one on blind spots and why this exists. My first WordCamp talk ever, WordCamp Baltimore, circa 2015. I get up there and I give a talk on social media and how you incorporate social media within your WordPress website and how you use it as a tool to drive traffic to your website, how they go hand in hand, what have you, first WordPress talk, right? Like many people, my final slide is thanks for coming to my talk. Here's my headshot. Here's where you find me. I'm now open to questions. I field a bunch of questions. Goes off really well. End of the talk, as these things go, somebody comes up to me, afterwards wants to do a couple quick follow-ups. I'm trying to detach my computer. Next person up is Aaron Campbell. He's about to go. And this one guy comes up to me, looks at me, he goes, hey, Larry, I just want to make a comment to you. I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I think he's going to ask something about my talk. He looks at me and he goes, you're a really pretty girl, but that headshot is doing you no favors. And he proceeds to tell me how I am so much more attractive than the headshot I have on my final slide.
I'm dying inside.
This is 2015.
No one's ever told me that.
Right? 2015. Like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, like, Brad and Victor, you don't have anybody coming up to
No one
you
ever told me that.
at the end of your
No.
talk saying, hey, you're a really attractive guy, but like that headshot on that final slide, like, that's not doing you any favors. Like, this is what you should do instead. And that's just like one story.
I have
Like,
a similar story as well.
imagine, and I have, like, I'm not going to be like hijack the conversation here with like 4 or 5 other stories. Believe me, I have other stories. And like, so imagine that person leading a local meetup. Imagine that person leading a WordCamp. As you said, Victor, hidden biases. Imagine how much harder it is then for me to get my talk taken with somebody whose biggest takeaway from my 30-minute presentation is I'm a pretty girl and I need a better picture.
Ugh.
Yeah.
2015. Like, we're not talking this happened in 1975. We're
I know,
saying
I
this
know.
happened in 2015 in Baltimore.
We did have a good question, and I guess this could also be good for Ebonie. Allie Nimmons asked, after the last all-female team, what did we do to make sure those women continue to contribute on future releases?
Well, I think just thinking about what I've kind of encountered, and the people that constantly reach out to me, and just how to be a good ally, just continue engaging with those people. I personally haven't done a lot of WordPress recently, a lot of WordPress open source work recently, but the fact that people still reach out, like Laura reaches out to me all the time, Mike Oteri, it got me to talk to begin with, got me the public speak, because he was just in my DMs, just like, hey, are you interested? I would love to talk to you. He even offered and has offered to help me find topics. So like doing things like that, constantly engaging with these people, making them feel comfortable, making them feel seen, which is most important, because when you show up as a minority, as a woman, as a person of color to these events, and you don't know anybody, and everyone else does not look like you, that's very intimidating. I know only very few people, know that feeling. Well, me and Laura, but it's very intimidating, and it can send you right out the door. If no one talks to you, no one makes you feel comfortable, you'll just be leaving, and I've done that multiple times. But the fact that I have really people that are always just like really see my potential, really are interested in getting me involved, that's literally the only reason why I spoke at WordCamp Montclair, did the panel, and that's the only reason why I spoke at WordCamp US. And being really, really focused on like that sets me up for success, because now I'm just like, you know what, I'm just going to apply for a talk. No one needs to contact me. I'm feeling confident now, and we can continue with that way of doing things, and just actively encouraging people, and not being passive about it, to keep people coming back to the WordPress open source community, and keep people's confidence up, and keep building their confidence up enough where you don't even have to do that anymore, because they're going to be like really, really comfortable, and they're going to know that this space is for them as well. So that's what I would recommend.
I love that.
Yeah, that's it's good advice. And kind of going back to one of your earlier points, Ebonie, this is WordPress is a very welcoming community, a very warm and open community. And I honestly think that's another big reason why it's grown the way it has, between meetups and WordCamps and just getting together and helping online and virtual. It's just extremely, welcoming, and it's nobody, I should say, there probably are, but most people don't have these major egos. We want to help each other. I think a lot of it's that open source mentality of kind of all want to contribute and help grow together and grow things. You see it from the commercial side, the premium side, competitors between agencies and products and hosts. Well, hosts are still a little more cutthroat, but maybe more so than the other stuff. But it is a really welcoming community. So we want you to come. We want you to join, especially as meetups and WordCamps are starting to come back. I mean, that's the best place to start, your local community. Philly has an amazing, meetup group that's been going on for over a decade. Most major cities have meetups that have been going on over a decade, barring the lockdown situation. But that's a perfect place to get involved, because it's not just geeking out with tech, but you're geeking out with tech and WordPress with people in your community. and people you probably maybe already know, but if you don't, at least you have something in common. You live in the same city or the same general area. So highly recommend getting involved in local events, dip your toe in, start talking to people, and very quickly realize just how warm and you know, how warm and open this community is. It truly is. I can't say it enough. So cool. All right. Well, I mean, that was a great show. I mean, I love shows where I learn a lot. And I love shows where I don't really know everything we're going to talk about. I don't know the history. So I really appreciate everybody coming on and talking. It's a very important topic. I know for me, you know, there's always work to do. And I think one of the areas I want to focus on is working to be a better ally. Because I mean, Laura, to your point, you know, not speaking up and not, you know, pushing back when we see some of these things more public in comments or in Slack or whatever, is, you know, consent almost, right? So I think that's something many of us, you know, need to keep in mind, especially myself and others, of, you know, we should step up and we should speak up and certainly push back when we see things that are inappropriate, things that might, you know, push people out of the community, because we are a very open community and we're only going to be better the more diverse we are. So final thoughts.
Cool.
Let's go around the horn. You know, any final thoughts around, you know, the release, where people get involved, they want to reach out to you, where they can find you online. Ebonie, you want to kick it off for us?
Sure. Yeah. You can reach out to me at my Twitter handle. I'm not really a WordPress account. I speak a lot about music. I'm a metalhead, so I'm a DJ and I do all that stuff. So don't be discouraged if you go to my account and you see nothing about WordPress. But I do have, you know, senior, you know, WordPress engineer in my, you know, bio. So you'll know it's me, I promise. So feel free to DM me with any questions. I really enjoy helping underrepresented groups get into tech because I've come a long way. I'm a career transitioner myself. I didn't start coding until I was 30, and now I'm a lead software engineer. So I'm very happy to, you know, come so far, and I love helping people do that. So feel free to contact me. And final thoughts is I look forward to hopefully being a part of the next call.
Awesome. How about you, Laura?
I'd say, yeah, you pretty much can find me everywhere in the universe at New York Allure, whether it's Twitter, Slack, my website, whatever, that is where you will find me. It is me everywhere. Yeah, feel free always to ask me a question, DM, public, at message, whatever. I'm there. You can totally find me. And I would say, just for anybody who does not code, and is older. I mean, I am older Gen X. I'll just say it. I'm 57 years old. Like, there is a place for you. You're not going to be slotted off to the side. And reach out. I would love to have a conversation. And just giving a quick plug, WordCamp Montclair that we've mentioned a couple times during this podcast is happening again in June. We have an active speaker call open. We have an actor sponsor call open. I want to see more folks who are women, who are gender non-binary, who are from underrepresented groups to apply. We welcome your talks. You have a place at Montclair. We were, without question, go back and look at last year's site. We were the most diverse WordCamp, frankly, ever. If you look at our organizers and you look at our speakers, we're there across every single group. We welcome you. Please apply.
And it was a beautiful, are you guys doing the same camp? I have to say, for everyone, if you are within driving distance of New Jersey, Mike and Laura did a great job. The food was great. The people were great. The campus was really nice. It was a very beautiful campus. Like the new word, I mean, I don't know what it's called, Montclair State or something.
Montclair State University.
Montclair
Yeah.
State. It was a great, and it was funny because sometimes, you know, people go to New York and they go to LA, or, you know, I don't know if LA has a WordCamp, but whatever, these bigger cities. And yeah, WordCamp Montclair, don't sleep on it. It was so great. It was a good time. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Next week, March 10th, we're back to the WordPress Friday Hangout. Topic is AI coming for our jobs. Ooh, cliffhanger. Probably. We'll find out next week. We got Aaron Edwards joining us from Web3WP. He also launched a new site, wpdocs.chat, which is a chat GPT powered WordPress docs chatbot. Very interesting. And we also have a gentleman named Joseph Williams who used ChatGPT to create a fully functional WordPress plugin. That's not scary at all, but there we go. So we'll dig into that next week. But I'm Brad Williams for Victor Ramirez. This is the WordPress Friday Hangout. Thanks for joining and have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
There we go. All right.